The depth of your friendship isn't determined by just the frequency of your interaction. It's about the empathy that your friends extend to you.
Last core memories of this little apartment. It's so pretty. It's honestly so homey.
Welcome to Viet Boss Babes, a Vietlish podcast that connects Vietlish communities and culture around the world. And so today I am honored to have my friend Betty Wang on the show. And the reason why we're having this podcast is because Betty is leaving us to move to London after the summer. So we thought this would be a great time to reflect on your experience moving around, building communities, and just reflecting on your identity and how it's grown. I'm going to be very sad when you leave.
Yeah.
So this is the episode for it. So Betty, welcome to Viet Boss Babe.
I'm so excited. And also, can I just say that I feel like this moment is a testament to how activism works because I have been advocating to be on this podcast
For a very long time.
for a really long time. And this is the best going away present that I could receive. So I'm actually so honored to be here. I'm almost nervous, and I'm never nervous. I'm literally sweating.
So Betty has been with Seen Viet Boss Babes ever since it was just a logo and an idea.
Yes.
It was so crazy. I remember when I first showed you the logo on the streetcar. We were going somewhere. I'm like, this is Viet Boss Babes. It sounds cringy, but we're going to make it happen. You've been a huge advocate. You also listen to every episode that's ever come out, and it's been such a crazy support for the podcast.
Yeah. And I feel like every time I listen to the podcast, even though it's someone from the Vietnamese diaspora, I could always relate to what they're saying, like partially, or like their either immigrant experiences, professional experiences, and how they felt in certain situations, navigating different conversations or things in life. So yeah, I'm a Viet Boss babe at heart.
So speaking of moving, tell us about yourself. Like, where did you grow up? What does that journey look like?
Yeah, so I was born in northern China in a city called Tianjin, and I moved at a really early age as well. My family were all northerners, and I think especially in mainland China, there's different conception of northern Chinese and southern Chinese. I grew up in a very different Chinese culture in the south, more until I was 7. I grew up in Xiamen, which is like more tropical region by the beaches. It was a smaller city. I remember one day my parents came in while I was graduating kindergarten and they're like, oh, we're moving to Canada. Everyone was Chinese in this kindergarten, but we had 2 Americans, and they would get bullied so much, the Chinese boys. And I was really scared to move to Canada because I was like, oh my God, what if I get bullied? We landed in Vancouver, and that's where I grew up. I still call Tianjin and Xiamen home because all of my relatives are still there. I would say a lot of my identity, who I am, I obviously feel very Canadian in some ways, like Asian Canadian. And whenever I see Vancouver, there's this distinct awareness of home. Whereas in Tianjin and Xiamen, it's like, I knew this was my surrounding. And then when I'm in Vancouver, I'm like, oh yeah, like this is the place I grew up. I know every street. I know when the restaurants have changed and things like that. I would call Vancouver home, but now in some ways, Toronto is a home base for me, which I'm sure we'll talk about eventually. I do think Toronto is like home for me as a coming of age to adulthood. Yeah, so lots of homes.
What did home mean?
Yeah, I feel like for me, whenever I think about, because I moved at such a young age, many things that were ingrained in me as a Chinese person, whether traditions were norms, like even the things you see at a supermarket, right? Those are all things that I feel are very entrenched in my childhood about what being Chinese is and the day-to-day of being Chinese. And when I think about home in that way, sometimes I forget that part of myself. But when I see something that reminds me of my Chinese identity, I think a lot back towards Xiamen with Tianjin, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm from Tianjin. If I see the same type of dish that I don't see in Vancouver, then I'm like, oh yeah, this reminds me of home. But I think when I think about who told me what was home and the traditional definition of your childhood and where you're born, I think a lot about China. But when I think about who I am, what my community feels like, it's this small part of Surrey, which is right outside of Vancouver. I'm like, oh, I know consciously this is my streets. It's like my shaping of my childhood and home. It's my definition of home. Whereas on paper, China, that's home to a degree, but what I call really home is Vancouver, and what I'm told is home oftentimes is places in China that I still relate to, but there's definitely a distinction there.
Do you feel like they fight each other in a way, or have you been able to make peace with the fact that you have multiple homes and multiple definitions of home? A lot of people who may be born and raised in Canada, in their certain city or country, I envy them. It feels so simple for them to say, home's Toronto, like, where else would it be, you know? And then if they ever move out of city, they still have just one place to go back to. Whereas I get existential crisis every now and then. The blessing that you have such a worldly experience, you have the privilege to move around, but it's also torn, and because I wake up every day, I'm like, is Toronto really home? Is this what home feels like?
I totally relate to that feeling, and when you were talking about it, I realized that for me, like home, I know certain cities within a period of time. Like I know a snapshot of the city during this time. And sometimes, you know, when people grow up in the same city, they were born in the same city, you can see the evolution of your life in this place, and you can see this place across all periods of time. And I feel like sometimes the tension is, even though I call somewhere home, I don't know the places. Or like when someone asks me for recommendations, I'm like, I actually can't give it to you because I was there 10, 15 years ago. I don't know what's new and poppin'. I can say that at times for Toronto, I know what's up because I'm here in this period of time. And I only know Vancouver as like this 15 or 20 years I spent there. And I only remember China in this specific era of my life. And I feel like there's a lot of nostalgia associated with it. But at the same time, you don't feel like you know the city 100%. It's almost like a figment of what it is rather than a present. It's like an idea.
Yeah.
And I feel that a lot with Vancouver and certain places in China.
For me, whenever I come back to Hanoi, it's so nostalgic. I grew up on these streets. I would run around, go grab breakfast with my friends or family, and a lady at the noodle shop down the street would talk to me because she's seen me growing up, and I eat her noodles every day growing up. Yeah, like it's either noodle or
rice noodles, like vermicelli kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
No, I'm like, there's some other types, and it's just like I go to the same shop every day, or I eat bao.
Out there buying breakfast. You have the breakfast stalls.
Yeah, so that was my go-to, and it's also the language that I use or the language that people describe. Like Mia is visiting Hanoi, that has a bittersweet connotation for me. In my head, I'm going home, but reality is that I'm visiting. Yeah.
That's how I feel too. I remember when I was little, I would visit this giant mega supermarket called Carrefour, which is like the French supermarket. And in my head, it was like the greatest thing because I only remember my hometown and that supermarket in this period of time. And then 10, 15 years later, I went back and I was like, this is like a dilapidated shopping mall. Like it's so old and ugly. Like no one goes there anymore.
It's like Disneyland.
Yeah,
it's
and
like
then
a
like,
magical
let me show
thing.
you the new stuff. You know, when you go home and you're like, but this is home. It's super nostalgic and familiar. But they're like, that's not even cool anymore. We don't even go to this area.
But in your mind, you're like, that was my childhood, like the adventures.
And China has changed so much. I'm going back to China in a month. I haven't seen Xiamen since 2016. Apparently, it's like really extra developed. I met this random white dude who was traveling and he was like, oh, like the Las Vegas of China. And I was like,
the Las Vegas.
That was not where I was coming from. But okay.
And like through all of this, you move with your family. It's like a common thread through your movements, you know? But obviously like now, right now you're living in Toronto and your family is not here, and then you're gonna move to London, which is even a little bit further. How do you feel like has being with family shape your early stage of home definitions and connections?
Because I think for me, home is always like energy or a vibe or like a relationship with people. It's like, why do I love long distance relationships, like friendships, families, and romantic relationships? I think the reason is because it's just the norm for me because I've never grown up in a place where everyone was in one place. When I grew up, most of my family was in the north, but my family was in the south of China. And then I moved to Canada and all of my family were basically in China except my mom and dad. And then I moved to Toronto and my family is in Vancouver. So there's always this idea that it's the relationship that makes you feel like home, not really a physical place. I have a very strong relationship with my mom who was with me my whole life. But I also think despite the distance, I still have very strong relationships with my auntie, my uncle, and my grandma. For me, it's not really about the daily gatherings that like really builds this idea of home. It's the idea that I could pick up the phone and call anyone and they'll get it. I have the privilege to fly anywhere to visit them if I needed to. When physical places change, sure, not everyone loves change and it could be uncomfortable, but for me, I never feel like lack of home. I don't feel like a sense of, like, oh, I've been displaced. Like rootless. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's because it's almost ingrained into your family culture as well, the nuclear family, right? That's really interesting because I guess I am experiencing that. My family has a very different definition of home. For them, my parents' best friends are still the ones they have known for the past 50 years. All the grandparents know each other. And when I visit, my mom would see this random auntie. It's like, oh yeah, like that auntie saw me growing up. And I'm like, what? That's so crazy. And they also live very long life in Vietnam. But it's like
the women be living especially.
The women are thriving. I will tell you that. And not to make certain comments, but like they really do be like living a matriarch at home.
On average, women live longer.
So it's like for them, it's like their definition is like this physical city that they've lived in, and also their sense of belonging is there, the culture is there. It's like it's very black and white for them where home is. And then here is like their first daughter who is like experiencing all of this like tension, identity crisis. For me, it's almost like a certain level of guilt whenever I move or enjoy the act of traveling, because it's like, oh yeah, but my family are not here. They set my life up so that I could do this. I still feel guilty for attending certain concerts. I'm like, oh, I should not be doing this
without them, sharing this experience without them.
It's a guilt of like, they work so hard for me to do this and I should be suffering, or like I should be working hard right now. Like I should not be enjoying my life, even though it's my money that I work hard for, and spending time with the people that I also work hard to cultivate relationships with. And
like it's fully mine.
Like of course with the foundation that they set up for me, but this is something that I've done for myself, and yet there's always a constant guilt subconsciously. I'm like, I should not be enjoying so much of this because they're not here. And in my mind, I always imagine this visual of them just waiting for me to come home.
It's scary, and I feel like especially because this is a new family model, you're all trying to, like you're in this pilot of a globalized family. There's just a lot of emotions and pressure that comes with figuring it out, like what works, what doesn't work. It's a lot of trial and error. Every year you do a new model of how you want to engage with your family. Maybe I'll visit 3 times a year. Maybe they come here. Maybe we mix things up a little bit. Whereas I feel like for me, in my family, my mom's like, this is what we're gonna do, because we've all like moved around all the time. It's also a different time in China too. Like during that time, a lot of people moved across different cities. So for my mom, I feel like she figured out what worked for her and passed on the mentality to me. So I don't think I experienced that as much pressure, but I feel like my mom would have definitely been the one to.
So tell us about your incoming move. Where are you going? Why are you leaving us?
Yes. I think for context, I am leaving for work, which I'm really excited about. Last year, I started a new role, and I'm really excited because it's working with the UN Refugee Agency. Everyone who knows me knows this is the area that I feel I could really see myself dedicating my life to, which is around refugee protection and work surrounding that. For the last year, I've been working remote because most of my colleagues are in Europe, in the UK, where one of them's in Mozambique. I'm really excited to move because remote working is good up to a certain extent when you're a young professional and you want those soft connections, right? Like the daily brushing past a colleague and having small talk, being able to jump into a room and brainstorm something, or being able to network around the city with people you're having meetings with. All of those things gets erased a lot of times with remote. So I'm really excited to move to London to work on my professional self. But I also feel like it's just really exciting to be in a new city. Hopefully it goes well. We'll see.
It will go well. Oh, this is so exciting. A London era. Have you started watching
Bridgerton?
Yeah.
To get ramped up on
culture.
On the culture. I feel like I should get ramped up on like the different neighborhoods more, because London is so sprawling, whereas most Canadian or American cities, it's like there's one downtown and like that's the center. But I feel like there's obviously a commercial center, but neighborhood they're from, there's so much pride in it. And I've never experienced that before, so I'm really excited to check out all the different areas.
I feel like in Toronto, we kind of have neighborhoods, but the Canadian niceness really put a little lukewarm into everything. It's like, oh yeah, I live in Ossington, but that's it. It's not like I live in Ossington.
It's funny because our difference is you wear a beanie this way if you live in Queen West, and you wear this type of shoes in like Queen East or something like that. But then when I talk to my London colleagues, they're like, if you're a Russian oligarch, you're living there. But if you're not a Russian oligarch and you want to live in a warehouse as a punk artist, you live here. And I was like, these are such different pockets. Persona. I was like, this is very intense. But I'm excited. And to that point, I've been in Toronto for almost a year now. I feel like this was the first year where I was really intentional about being in one place and just resting. Ever since COVID, I've moved around so much. Like every 6 months to a year, I would switch places. I was so tired, and I realized I'm really defining what home means to myself now, which is like, what is my routine? What does my relaxed day look like? What is my relationship to the community I live in? I really wanted to explore that more. Being in Toronto helped me realized how important it is to have a home base. Because before I would be like, oh, I want to explore and I want to travel every 3 months to a new place. But there's so much beauty in staying in one place for a bit, centering yourself in a community and knowing people when you walk down the street. That's really special.
Yeah.
And I feel like Toronto has always given me this protection or stability when I needed it.
Yeah.
I really appreciated my year here.
Yeah.
Taught me a lot more about home. I even kept plants alive.
That's crazy.
I've never had a plant in my life. And now I'm buying flowers every week.
Oh. She looks like dried flowers. You know?
Yeah, actually kind of artsy. Maybe I'll keep her.
And how have staying in one place taught you about home?
Let me describe what it felt like when I didn't have a home base. I felt like I was constantly figuring things out. Like every day I had to figure out a new language, a new system, where I always felt like I was settling in. There's that corner in your house that you never fully decorated. It doesn't feel like you, right? Or you walk out on the street and you're constantly meeting new people, but you're not really seeing repeat people. You make really quick relationships and that's really nice, but it's really hard to build more long-term stable thing. You never know if you're gonna see a person next week. And I feel like that made me a bit restless. It made me feel like I was constantly trying to get through this period and explore, but I feel rested. I didn't feel connected to myself in some way. And I also feel like my environment didn't always reflect me. That's something really special about having a home, which I think most people can agree. It's just like now recently I found out the beauty about having a home.
Yeah.
Which I feel Toronto, what I really love about it is that I feel like my environment to an extent reflects who I am. I'm able to put up more art or invest in things that I don't think, oh, can I pack this in a suitcase? Or do I have to throw this out? Because then that thinking, I never invest in anything around me and it doesn't feel homey. I also think there is something nice about going to the same 3 or 4 coffee shops, going to the same gym, because then you meet people consistently and have light relationships. I think I'm really good at maintaining family relationships and deep conversations with friends and catching up on their lives. But the light touch relationships of, oh my God, I don't need to know your whole life story, but I see you in a class every single week and we catch up a little bit for 10 minutes. It's commitments, but you feel like you saw a familiar face. And I feel like those type of relationships made me feel very fulfilled every day in some way. Like I felt connected to people and my area and surrounding. And I feel like when you're always traveling, it's not always the case.
Yeah.
You have to be super intentional about grabbing dinner or seeing a friend. But there's also a beauty in bumping into people on the street. Quick catch up. Toronto really healed me in that way, where it showed me slow living is also really nice, because I feel like I have had space to be like, where do I see my space reflecting on myself? If I have a chill afternoon, where would I go? And I love how I could bump into you on the streets too. That's really nice.
Or like, I have an extra can of beans or something, do you want it? And then you just walk over, you know, and then we end up with have a 30-40 minutes conversation, catch up and be like, okay, have a good night, and go on with your day.
I love that. Or I'll be like, can I just sleep here today?
Yeah.
And they'll be like it's just, I think that's something that makes me scared about moving, because it's like building that again and that takes time. But I know it's gonna happen. I'm optimistic, but I think I just enjoy that element so much.
Yeah. Yeah, tell me more about that fear. I feel like everyone here, like all our friends, are very excited for you.
Yes.
I think we're all rooting for you, and I think you're gonna do so great. And it's like we're also all very, very privileged to live in a place where a lot of your close friends could probably visit you. This is not your first rodeo of moving, and then people are like, okay, bye.
One friend was like, we're not throwing a goodbye party for you because we've thrown so many. They're like, we can't be using this as a milestone for your life anymore because it happens so often. I was like, so fair. I think it's because I got a taste of what community feels like. Like a really nice community.
This is nice.
Yes, and I feel like I'm really just sinking my teeth into the things you only find out when you've been in a place and done the big checklist things.
Yes.
Like, oh, I went to this cool restaurant, I went to this tourist attraction, and now I'm looking at random people throwing events in their house on a Saturday morning, a crocheting class or something like that, or hey, this random guy opened up a sewing shop so you can go around the corner and sew there. I think I was just sinking my teeth into some of that in Toronto, and I love it so much. That feeling of when you walk down the street, you see a random shop, go in, and you're like, whoa, I never realized this shop existed. I walked past the street all the time, but you went to all the big stuff around it. Now you're like, this is the only thing I didn't turn over yet. You're met with such a cool surprise and super unique things. That's the feeling I really enjoy. Doing it in a big city like London feels like I have to do the bucket list items first before I can really sink into something more individual, smaller scale, community based. But that could be a misconception. Now that I know I enjoy that stuff, right, I would be more intentional about doing it. So like, I'm sure the ability for me to find that random shop with a random door will be much faster in London. But I think the fear is that. And I think on top of that, it's like, I think we had a conversation about this earlier as well, which is there's something so beautiful about living in a city with your close friends in your 20s when you're all kind of living alone and just like doing random things impromptu. I love that about friendships. We do more scheduled catch-ups, 2 weeks, 3 weeks out, but bumping into you on the street and being like, you need to come grab bubble tea with me right now is really beautiful. In London, of course, I have some friends who I know will be dropping by, but it's not that kind of day-to-day
interaction.
Exactly, again, the micro interactions that I think is like really fun. And I think, when you're with the right people in the right city, you can be in any city.
Yeah.
Not to hate on Detroit, but I could have a blast in Detroit with my good friends because you're just doing random things.
Yeah.
Even if you're in a super exciting city and you don't have that community or support, it could feel really boring. And I think like I'm excited that I'll have some friends there and hope more of my friends come to London so we can enjoy the city more. Yeah. That is my fear, missing out on the 20s with my best girlfriend person.
Oh, something I go through as well, because we're at a beautiful age. After this chapter of the 20s, a lot of people are going to have families or move on to your next big milestones, with or without building a family and so on, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, this is the only time when you get to live alone and throw slumber parties and having dates with your girlfriends on a weekly basis. And even for me thinking about moving to the next city, I've been in Toronto for 10 years.
That's a crazy number.
I know, it's a decade. Think about moving on to my next chapter and exploring a new city. There's a certain fear of missing out on the key moments, like the milestones. The one thing that I learned recently was your friends are your life witness. I get to witness you moving through different chapters of your life and then settling into Toronto. And not only that you're experiencing that for yourself, but I will also remember that for you. It's like I'm your memory keeper, and the other way around too.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think about that all the time. Like I always say, I'm like, oh, we're like standing testament to each other's lives. Because sometimes I will bring up something and you'll be like, remember when you said that in that moment? Or remember when you were so hungover and you did this? And I'm like, oh, I absolutely do not. Because I probably blacked out. I was so hungover.
But like, I was there.
Yeah, you were there. You were there.
I was holding your hair.
Yeah, exactly. And it's probably not like a bridal shower or a birthday party. It was like some random night out.
Like a random night out.
Exactly.
It's not an event, but it became an event. Now you look back to it.
And that's like what bonds us. I'm not going to cite the study, but there's a study. A study exists of, the core thing that bonds friends is nostalgia. But you can't have nostalgia if you didn't do much together.
Right.
So I want to experience life with
your girlfriend,
my girlfriends, a lot more. And I feel like now, because we're quite metropolitan in some way, like everyone is very free to go wherever their works take them or where their interests take them. In your mom's generation, it's easier to be like, everyone lives in the same building and we were friends. But now it's like you have to be super intentional about making sure you and your friends are in proximity to each other, because it's so easy to move around and still feel some kind of connection because you're on social media, you're calling and all of that. I think what I want to do is like be more intentional about being physically with my friends.
I haven't thought about it that way. It's an interesting shift, because when we are in our early to mid 20s, the world was telling us, focus on yourself, do you first, and like otherwise you get left behind. Like, you and I have moved in parallel. I was in Vietnam for like a whole year during COVID, but then we would do like remote workout together. And then when you were in, where were you? Mexico, but also field work. Then I'll be on a speed dial and we'll have voice notes together. We were always prioritizing ourselves. And when we see our friends prioritizing themselves, we're like, yeah, of course, no question asked. But then now you are saying like, I want to be intentional about prioritizing living with my closer friends. And it sounds like you also have a couple of friends who are also having the same priority.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love how we're aligned on that, to be honest. I think we're just realizing, life is really cool, but it doesn't really mean anything if you can't look back at it with the most meaningful friends, For example, being in Serbia and doing field work in aid was a huge part of my life, but you can never reflect on that part with me. And that's not that fun. Like, it's a huge part of my life and it's a huge part, but at the same time, it's not something we turn to and be like, haha, do you remember this thing?
I only hear about it.
You weren't there to be like, LOL, look at what you were wearing, or like, do you remember when you got stuck in the mud? I think that's the point, like every small moment in life, and I think that's so beautiful. Like, imagine doing the small and big things with your friends. And I'm glad that women are doing that now, because before you would do it for your husband, obviously, or like your partner, whoever it is, but now we're like, actually, we could just move for our friends, and that's okay too.
And it's better. It's kind of better than prioritizing my husband.
Yes. Like the girl group should come together and then bring their husbands if needed. Like whatever partner. Bring your partner if you
Yeah.
But like I would totally do that.
Yeah, like running a matriarch household with all my girlfriends.
Exactly. There are like in Germany. I met so many people who lived it's not that hardcore, but there were these wartime buildings in certain cities that were refurbished and revitalized. So now they look like really cool art communities. People raise each other's children, friends all live together. I was like, this is sick. But like they're not like hippies, like only going to Burning Man like 20 times a year. They're not that type of people.
Yeah.
They're just living their lives, but they purposely chose to live in this group living community. I was like, that's sick.
Co-parenting, but like for
Yeah.
I feel like growing up, even now when I visit Vietnam, like Hanoi, I have so many quote-unquote godmothers. All of these godmothers saw me growing up, or have like sleepover, or have like braided my hair and put me in ballet practice, dropping their kids off and stuff. It's like co-raising children. I get to also be a witness of you being a mother. Yeah. Whereas I feel like, I think that's interesting, because I feel like before this generation, we're kind of like, at least once you are married, you kind of disappear with that marriage, you know? You kind of disappear in it. Like people talk about like,
You
like
withdraw from society.
you moved to Milton. Why do you move there? Your friends are not there. As adult, life gets busy.
Yes.
Why can't we share the busyness together?
And to your point, at least in our early 20s, the more dominant narrative is like, watch out for yourself, look out for yourself, do your thing. If they're true friends, they'll still be there. I think everyone should have a period of their lives where they're like, I'm gonna do this and maybe I have to do it alone, but it's worth a try. And your real friends will support you. When I left and I came back, sometimes I was like, oh, will my friends still be there? Be the same? And of course, real friends, it feels like not a day has passed. And I think that strengthens your bond. But then again, it's a narrative you're telling yourself. It doesn't have to be your whole life. And I feel like I'm at a point where I'm like, oh yeah, I think I still have a few more years in me where I should chase my career and do these things. But more and more, I'm thinking about my next move, or even in London, how do I get my girls to come? How do I get us in the same place? The narrative for myself is shifting. If I accomplish all these things individually,
Who's gonna
who
witness
cares?
it?
I'm gonna be like, okay, I accomplished it, I'm over it. Like, what about the day-to-day things? I wanna go grocery shopping with my friend and complain about prices. That's the things I'll remember, not when you got this promotion. I will, but it's not that serious.
Because you can always get another promotion.
Exactly. I'll never complain about prices for the first time ever again in the store.
Prices. Let's dig into your work with the UNHCR and your broader activism work with displaced communities. I know it's been a big part of your life. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I have, of course, as an immigrant and being in Canada where there's like huge refugee resettlement population, but Canada is a big resettlement country. It's a concept or reality that you experience all the time. Everyone's from different places. The topic of immigration and migration has always been interesting to me, but I think really like my interest with, supporting displaced communities, forcibly displaced communities, is really serendipitous in some ways. I remember it started when it was 2020, COVID shut down, everyone was a little weird being in their house. I felt a sense of hopelessness and purposelessness. When I was home, I just graduated university and my full-time job was pushed back. I was like, what do I do with 6 months? Now I'll be like, I'll do whatever. But back then you're really stressed about life working out. I was listening to this New York Times daily podcast. They were talking about how a refugee camp was on fire in Greece. When we were younger, we heard about the Mediterranean crisis, but it was viewed as something that ends. Like it happens and then it resolves in some way. But then I think through that podcast, I was like, this is not a resolved situation. This has been ongoing, but it's out of the popular news media cycle most of the time. So then I decided to go online and see if I can support in some way. Like maybe I should volunteer at a refugee camp and understand what is going on with the situation. From that point till 10 days later, I moved to Serbia for a few months. And my mom was like really upset, obviously, because she's like, you're not vaccinated. Like the world is really scary. But I was kind of young and dumb too. This just feels right. For context, the Balkan region is right outside of the European Union. So a lot of people would arrive, for example, in Greece, and they would try and walk to the EU to seek asylum. Like they would go north into the Balkans and then west to seek asylum. But a lot of people were stuck there because the EU wasn't really admitting or giving people a chance to apply for asylum. There was a lot of humanitarian aid needs. Witnessing that for the first time, like being in Serbia and witnessing like what a privilege it really, like the scale of migration that is still happening before our eyes. Because in Canada, you're seeing the last stage, right? Like someone is displaced and then maybe they've been displaced for years and then finally they get refugee status. And if they're lucky enough, they maybe come to Canada. You're seeing the very last stage of what's happening in the process of forced migration. For me, it was the first time where I was like, oh, this happens every day to normal people. I hear people's stories. They're a middle-class family, university educated. A lot of them speak 3 to 4 languages. They're going about their lives and something happens. Maybe a climate disaster, maybe a government situation is not going well. And they're really forced to flee. The narratives that were, when we group them into numbers, like look at the scale of this crisis, you really dehumanize the individual stories you could really connect to. And I think what I just realized is like, because I grew up in a place where people didn't feel like they saw economic opportunity, but because of that time and that political period, Canada was very open to Chinese people coming. I think that was sheer luck in some ways, because for a few years, the people I was working with in the Balkans, for example, Germany, welcomed a lot of refugees. And then one day they're like, actually, no, it's too much for our system to handle. And then you see the arbitrariness in who gets to move and why, and who has legal status versus illegal status. Sometimes it's just a policy, or like it's just a stroke of a brush in some ways. I see a lot of that injustice in terms of outcomes for people. I think that's what made me really relate to them. My family had reasons to leave as well for a better life. They weren't fleeing from persecution, but because of the systems in our favor, we were able to be legal and weren't persecuted. My relationship to the work is that I do see a lot of arbitrary nature of what we view as migration or asylum and things like that. And I feel everyone can relate to the idea of not having a home, because everyone has a home. When I think about someone missing home and not being able to go back, there's a human connection for anyone who is displaced. And that's why I feel so strongly about the issue, is because it feels such a human connection to most people's stories. Even if people are ripped away from their home, they still deserve rights and protection. And that's what, like that experience and some more time in Serbia, I just felt so connected to those narratives and those stories and those people that I feel like it's something I could dedicate my life to.
Yeah.
I think the issues and the tensions are only going to get worse as we see in the political climate. And I just feel like more and more people need to be able to advocate and show the human side of what a lot of people are experiencing.
How has your exposure and experience of field work bridged with your work now with the UN? Now that you've been on both sides, receiving the funding and deciding on what to distribute, and the side of actually being on the ground and working with these humans. You're not only looking at these people as numbers or documents or stats, but you're actually meeting them and getting stories.
Yeah. I feel like for me, the distinction more so comes from when I was in Serbia, for example, working in the field. You could be in the UN and still work in the field, but I did it with a really awesome grassroots organization called Collective Aid. A lot of times grassroots organizations come in because the issue isn't a priority funding space for a larger international organization or intergovernmental organization. And I feel like it's not, like, I think those experiences differed, of course, in the sense that I feel like the geography was different, the political situation was different, but also I think I was able to meet people face to face when I was in the field and understand the challenges and the ethical dilemmas that a lot of people have in those situations. I feel like you have to make the call almost day to day around what you can do best in a resource constrained environment. I think what resonated with me the most when I was working in the field is really getting an understanding of how things can change even week to week. At the UN, we're looking at a lot more of the macro, at least in my role, understanding a country generally. But when I was in Serbia, it was like, how did every day change in Serbia and what the situation was? In that way, you were more in tune and you had to be more reactive to what was happening. At least with my UN role, I feel a little bit more stability because you are able to make maybe medium or even longer term decisions. I think the biggest thing for me really is being able to talk to the people and hear their stories. Because right now, my role with UNHCR, it's like I do know people's stories, but usually through my colleagues who are in the field. But before I was that field focal point, I could never forget the faces I see who literally looks like my friend, you know, that a friend I have back home, or someone who would teach me a specific language or tell me or show me stories and food and call their mom and daughters from back home where they were displaced. It's seeing the human side of things that sticks with me a lot.
Yeah.
And I feel like, on another note, the people I worked with, a lot of them were volunteers. They weren't even compensated. I just felt like there was something really inspiring about how the average person, no matter who they are, can find this work important and feel like they need to take time off work to help. And I feel like learning about why they also came and why we happen to be in the field together is also really inspiring. And I think it just reminds me that if I care, it's enough. I think a lot of people will be like, oh, I care, but what can I do about it? I think for them, when I hear their stories too, I'm like, oh yeah, if you care, you can always do something about it.
How do you reconcile between what you have seen on field? Because that was part of your day-to-day, you know? And then now you live in a metropolitan city, you're moving to London. Are there parts of you that you find hard to reconcile between like the work that you do and you're passionate about and like your day-to-day life?
For sure. I feel a lot of guilt, and I felt a lot of guilt. And in moments I still feel a lot of shame and guilt, reconciling, of course, with my privilege and my ability to move. One of the key moments I remember is where one of the areas I used to go and provide aid at was right on the border into the EU. I'm literally providing aid to people who have been stuck there for a few days or even a few weeks trying to get across the border but can't. And then on a weekend off, I would use my passport and go across the border, no questions asked. So those kind of things are really hard to reconcile. As you may remember, when I came back from field work, I had a really hard time. I struggled with my mental health. And it was just like this overwhelming sense of feeling disoriented. Like, how can the reality that I lived with and the reality of a booming metropolitan city where people care about their $8 matchas, spin rides, and abs coexist? You have to recognize it and it exists. And like, I think class differences, you know, like people's reality, they all exist. But I've learned to take care of my mental health so it doesn't paralyze me, because those paradoxes will always be there. And the quicker you are to reconcile with them and find the strength to stay connected to the issue, that's the important part. It's not the I'm living in London that's a challenge. It's more like, what if I live in London and forget about the issue that I genuinely care about? And I feel like it's important, because sometimes people can be so caught up in their day-to-day. You can't take care of other people unless you take care of yourself and you're happy and fulfilled. And if this is something that I feel fulfilled doing and adds to my life, I'm gonna do it. The important thing is not forgetting who I am and what I care about. That is the most important thing. Part of the reason I am moving to London is because there is a community of organizations supporting migrants. It is somewhere where a lot of people talk about the issue as well. And I feel like it's about being involved in that space, in that advocacy and support space. That's important. And it's less about like, oh, I'm guilty that I'm in London. Yeah, you can sit with that guilt. And I think it's healthy to reflect on that. But at the same time, I'm always cautious of how it shouldn't paralyze me.
Yeah.
Like, I should deserve to be happy and support other people. And that's like the main priority.
Yeah. And it's like you can live in parallel and they don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can have both.
I think at the end of the day, like, people have very different philosophies to, of course, how they approach life, or maybe how they relate to advocacy or space work or charity work or whatever it is. But I think my approach is, when you're suffering yourself, you're not helping anyone. If you go to a really dark place and it paralyzes you, that's not contributing or pushing the needle on anything. And that's why it really was a hard lesson for me to be like, unless I could take care of myself, my own mental health, and how I thought about the situation and how I reconciled like my life versus some of the realities of other people's lives, unless I do that, I can't be a net contributor to the cause.
Yeah.
There's no glory in suffering. You know, I don't think most people that I supported want me in their position either. Yeah, that's kind of where I stand.
Talk about your move to London.
Yeah.
What emotions are coming up right now?
To be honest, I feel super excited in a lot of ways. There are so many elements to this. I feel excited because I enjoy my work and I like the people I work with. I can't wait to be in the same city as them and be more accessible. The time zone really kills you sometimes. So I'm really excited for that. I think secondly, there is something about arts and culture that I really love. I love that about Toronto, but I think it truly is at a different scale when you're in London, or so I've heard. And I'm really excited to be in that space where there's a lot more history, art, and culture that I can experience. I feel really excited that I can be closer to a lot of people I worked with in the refugee protection space on a grassroots level. A lot of them are across Europe and still doing really amazing work. And I feel like sometimes you're just with people and they fuel you in some way. When I spend time with those people, I'm really excited to be close to them. I think I would love to volunteer or work again in some grassroots capacity. Europe makes that a little bit more accessible. Of course, with any city or any move, you feel a bit uncomfortable or nervous. But I've come to know that the nervousness is just because uncertainty. But when you're there and you're doing the day-to-day, everything feels a little bit more certain. So I know it's just a natural part of the move. I did tell Mia that I'm gonna miss her a lot. I think one thing that I'm gonna miss a lot is just random days where I can see you and people. I feel like our lives are gonna have more and more characters and stakeholders in it. And I hope we can still have this dynamic sometime again outside of Toronto. I think I would really miss that. So that makes me a little bit sad that the chapter is closing in some way. But I know you're going to visit. I know I'm going to visit. So that makes me really happy.
We're so excited for you for this move. You will be leaving a big shoe to fill. Talking about stakeholder, I'm like, which stakeholder is going to take up Betty's spot in Toronto? I don't think there's a lot of competition.
Yeah, I love it.
So what do you think helps a friendship survive during these moves?
Okay. I'm kind of like a subject matter expert on this topic.
Yeah, you are actually.
I think both parties need to be good at communication. Friendship is never going to survive a long distance, right? I think both stakeholders have to put in the work. When I moved out of the city and came back, I felt a lot of my friendships, including you, were solidified because I felt when I was gone, I never felt like I had to formally reach out. I just had to be like, yo, this is what's up. Or one day I would just like send a voice note or something like that. And when I came back, everyone rallied around me, supported me, asked me what I needed. I really love that. The depth of your friendship isn't determined by just the frequency of your interaction. It's about the empathy that your friends extend to you. Because I see sometimes friendships fall apart because people are like, oh, I don't have time for this person. What was really powerful about my friendship is people were understanding when I wasn't responsive because I was having a really hard time, but they were able to put themselves almost in my shoes or understand what I was going through without me needing to ask and be there for me in the way I needed. I think a lot more empathy and good communication has always been foundational to the friendships that I have. I also think I really am intentional about keeping up with people's lives who aren't around me and updating them about what's going on. My group chats with my friends are always popping off. And so you understand because you've been on the receiving side of that. Where I think I call my friends out of the blue. I don't just schedule things. We have conversations where sometimes we're both doing something and catching up on the side. I think it's those constant informal interactions that's important to keep the day-to-day going. And I think the last thing is I'm always willing to pull up to a friend's house, like even if it's like 5-hour flight away. Like I think I could make something work, and I feel like most of my friends feel the same way about that. No distance is too long for us to maintain this friendship and build core memories. And I think it's easy to get bogged down of like, oh, I have this problem, I have this vacation plan, I have work, like all of these things. But at the end of the day, if you're gonna prioritize your friendship like any other relationship or work, it's gonna show because you're gonna spend time and effort planning those interactions and visits, right? To me, it is a priority. Friendships are 100% a priority for me because I know that's what gives my life meaning. When I say that to my friends, they're not intimidated by that statement. They're like, duh, I feel the same. And I think knowing that I have all of these people like that in my life is such a privilege. It makes me happy. What about you? You are also really good at maintaining long distance friendships.
I'm actually a maid of honor of a friend from secondary school, and we haven't lived in the same city for 15, 18 years.
It's crazy.
I think I remember us being, we did grade 7, grade 8 together, and she moved to the US, and we've been long distance since then. To this day, I'm like, nice.
You made it.
Yeah. I find that it comes with chemistry, for sure, alignment, because I feel like that's the first thing. Are we looking at the same thing? Do we have the same values when it comes to friendship priority, but also how we go about our relationship? Especially when you are remote or long distance, there needs to be more glue to keep the friendship together. An example of that is I remember I would get your advice on my career and you'll share tidbits about your move and different career decisions. And I think being able to seek out that support, not every friendship do that, but the more category of things that you can seek out for support, the better. Because you're like, okay, I have this sounding board for different topics I can go to, and then that kind of also increase the chances of interaction that you have. I feel like it's just two parties willing to mutually be there for each other, but also in a low maintenance way. Because I feel like I'll send you 5-minute voice notes about my life, and maybe you reply or take a week to reply, but it's never taken personally because I'm like, I know you're gonna be there. I also know when there is an emergency, you will pick up right away when it's needed. It's like certain level of mutual maintenance expectations that is needed from the two. I feel like that is really nice. I don't know if other friendships are doing this, but I have had also tough conversations with friends and where it's like a pieces of feedback or like there is, miss the delta in the wavelength of us in pulling into the friendship.
The wavelength. That's so specific.
If I care enough, I will call you out for it. A lot of people think that it's aggressive, but I'm like, my people have been intimidated or like that's a little aggressive, but as long distance, how else are you gonna strengthen that friendship? The only way is through communication. I found that has either broken the friendship or really bring the friendship together.
I think it's a big milestone in friendships when you have the courage to give feedback and the other person has the courage to actually take it. That's just a big step into a friendship, right? And I feel like once you get over that hump and you realize it's actually not personal, like both of your goals are to stay friends, then you end up strengthening the friendship, right? And I think I actually learned a lot from you because you're not that aggressive when you give feedback. I think you do cater it to some person, unless you're like really upset, obviously. But I think what I love is that you can give feedback and you're also patient with seeing it through. There's nothing left on the table. If you had an issue, you wouldn't ghost someone. You would be like, this is my issue with you and let's work together to address it. Which I like. But I think on the empathy point, I really liked too, because not every friendship is going to be 5-minute voice notes back and forth, and it doesn't have to be. But I think the most beautiful part about a good friendship is knowing what your friend needs and who they are, because not everyone is going to fulfill all of your needs. Be that person to give you what you need in that moment. The more you know your friends, the more you know why they're special, what specific role they play in your life, when you need them, and who they are as a person. When you're willing to accept that and be okay with the way they show up for you, knowing they have good intentions, that's really beautiful. That takes empathy and understanding your friend, right? Because you can't always show up the same way for everybody, and your friends might not show up the same way you show up for them, but it doesn't mean they care any less. And I think that is something that I learned, and it made me feel like I can see my friends and understand them way more too.
Goal for friendships, especially as we're living in a world where people are going to move around and have different lives, is like once a year, no matter what happened, it's like a committed girls trip. I think that's so important, and I feel like that has solidified so many of my friendships. Friends next door into really strengthening that friendship through a weekend trip or a trip somewhere. You haven't left yet. Hey, remember Mexico?
Planning these trips every year
without me.
No, I know what you're saying.
Because I feel like even for our friendships, to be honest, before Serbia, we weren't really that good of friends. It's like even before that, we were kind of know of each other through mutual friends and stuff, but we weren't that close. I remember when I'm like, Betty's gonna be my best friend. She just doesn't know it yet. And then I invited you to Mexico, and then we just went, and I think
that was really beautiful.
But it came from a trip like that. And before that, we actually hadn't lived in the same city for a year or two, because of COVID.
Is that your tip to kickstart your friendship with someone by bringing them to a foreign place
on a trip? And I feel like nowadays, if you live in different cities and stuff, I think it's like when you're early 20s, like you kind of make excuse out of it because you don't have money. But now we have more agency in our late 20s, entering our 30s. We have that financial means to be able to do this. Like, why would you not?
Exactly. I'm already plotting. Like, I've already dropped the idea in your head. I was like, hey, you know about like St. Patty's or like King's Day in Europe? Like, maybe you should drop by.
I'm doing that.
No,
I'm put that on my calendar.
I told you for a reason. You have to show up.
And I guess on that, in your next chapter, what kind of relationship are you hoping to deepen?
Putting on the same amount of effort I put in with my friends and our trips and our relationship with my mom. I feel like I've slowly realized how good it is when we both prioritize each other. But the challenge for me is I love traveling and inviting my friends over. We're making core memories, but being away from home, like a maintenance and an update type of dynamic. It's really cool that you and your mom and your sister and your brother, your dad too, your whole family, they do trips together where you do a girls trip or something. And I really want to be able to do that with my mom. And I feel like she's very much like a homebody. And when I was younger, I used to be really sad for her because I was like, she must be so sad she can't travel, because I wanted to travel all the time. But I realized, no, she's just actually a hermit and she loves being at home.
She'd probably look at you and be like, I feel so bad that this girl's leaving.
Yeah, she's
like, why would you do that?
Why are you so obsessed with being on planes? But I think at the same time, I think she would really appreciate it if someone planned more trips for her. And I think when I was younger, I felt like, why aren't you doing those things for me? But now I think I'm in a position where I feel very fulfilled and nourished by my relationships and my support system, that I feel like I can do more for her without being like, ugh, you know? Like now I'm like, I want to take you to places, I want to show you more things that I'm seeing. And she's always been interested in the stories and the people that I tell her about. And so I want to be able to do that for her. I also think I'm gonna drill down on my existing friendships even more. I think to your point about having a girls trip or an annual thing, I think that's just really special. And I feel like for the past few years, a lot of our friends around our age were trying to find their place in the world, who they are, and all of these things. I think we're still going through that journey, but I feel like we have more brain space now to be like, what kind of community do I want to be a part of? Like, who do I want to invest in outside of myself? And I think because a lot of us are at that stage, we're more able to say, I want to prioritize a trip, or I want to prioritize seeing this person, or something like that. I'm very open to new friendships, so if you want to be friends with me, you can.
I'll leave her Instagram.
Yeah, I think I'm very determined to keep my deep friendships the same amount, if not more deep.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm looking forward to that.
What about you and your relationship goals?
Just really spending time with my girls, because after this, people are getting married, you know, and people are moving to different cities.
I'm gonna lose them to marriage.
Yeah, I want to make sure we have this time left to just create more memories together in like the end of our 20s.
It's a different era, basically.
I don't know what the 30s have to offer. I think now we have the liberty and the privilege to have the agency to decide how our 30s is going to be carried out. It historically hasn't been that case for women. Right now we're at that era where a lot of women, and we're seeing a lot more examples of how women in their 30s are carrying their life in different ways outside of convention. And I think that's just beautiful. And I think that also means that our life is going to diverge or intersect in ways that we are unexpected, because no women have carried our lives like this in this culture. I think that's really fascinating to see. This is the time in the next year or so, show up for my friends more and throwing them parties and surprises that we will always have as core memories.
Yes. Like the milestone stuff. I feel like it's so important, especially a lot of Asian women who are growing up in Asian households. You're not celebrated. Like if I got an A on my test, my dad would be like, as you should.
My dad just like thumbs up.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm on a good day, he gives me thumbs up.
That's really, you know what, my mom does something really sweet now where she actually would verbally affirm me. She'd be like, you're doing great. I'm really proud of you. All of these things. Your mom does that too?
My mom replied on my Facebook comments with that. But like, they're like, yeah, mom and dad are so proud of you. And I literally cried when she was like, yeah, mom and dad are so proud of you. And I'm like,
that's so sweet.
First of all, you should be saying that more often. Okay. Thank you so much.
No, I think parents are learning. They're always learning more. Your little sister is probably the luckiest because they're learning
just receiving the fruits of my labor.
Or your suffering.
Yeah.
But I think we should do that with friends more.
Yeah.
Because your friends actually see of your more milestones than maybe even your parents, you know. Some parents don't even know what your milestones are.
I don't think they know what I do for a living, but
no, it's so real. My dad's like, why? What do you even do? He doesn't understand. He's like, why don't you just go back to corporate? No,
the point.
There will be no milestones. But I think celebrating milestones would be really special because I think growing up, a lot of us probably didn't have a lot of those, and we don't even know how to celebrate.
I joke about it, but it actually really matters that I showed up for my friend's wedding dress shopping. Yes. I think that was so core. I'm intentionally doing that kind of thing. Or like, I will go out my way to make sure like I go to music festivals with people, that kind of thing. I know that this is gonna go down the core memory lane. Questions.
Wow. 2 more.
Do you want more? Is there a version of you that only exists in a certain city? And what version are you taking to London?
I do think different versions of me exist in different cities. And I feel, for example, when I'm in Vancouver, I'm an absolute hermit. I'm the most introverted person. Yes. I don't leave the house. I'm just living in domestic bliss on my own, sometimes with my mom around. I definitely see different parts of myself. When I'm in Toronto, the community I surround myself with is actually more corporate than usual. I do find myself being involved, discussing topics, the 20s grind in the corporate world. I think I feel like I'm used to that. but it's not something I really relate to all the time. And I feel like I still haven't really sunk my teeth into certain communities that I want to develop myself in. I think not a lot of strong, I would say, not a lot of forced displacement refugee support community. There are a lot of cool organizations I've been a part of, but yeah, I feel like when I'm here, I'm definitely a little bit more corporate.
Because you're more like distance from the actual problems that you want to work with.
And I feel like when I'm in, for example, Mexico City, I actually find myself dressing a little bit different. I'm more experimental because I feel like in certain areas, people are very expressive and experimental with their style and their interests and passions. I find very encouraging. I think every environment that you're part of shapes you in some way. I found myself being super connected with self-expression when I'm there. I journal more. I'm more in touch with how I feel. I slow down and I'm less reactive. I'm more observant of people around me and how they express themselves. I'm more interested in certain forms and aesthetics. And I think that's really cool that that city could bring that out of me as well. I think back to Toronto, what I really actually enjoyed is I feel like actually people in Toronto are quite friendly and open to building community. Like I think even around our area, like more on the West End, like people love a neighborhood community feel more. A lot more people are also more intentional about doing that, about being open to conversation in public spaces and like sharing bits and bobs about their life, inviting people they just met to certain events, and like people are more experimental in that way. And I really want to bring that to London. I heard, there are a lot of international travelers or even expats that are immigrants, I guess, to London. It's definitely a hodgepodge, but you do find potentially like some people are not as social as others, and people have told me Toronto can be a more social city. So I just hope that I can bring that energy to my neighborhood, get to know my neighborhood, be open to talking to other people, be open to new experiences all the time. I think that's what I want to bring.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come back with a British accent.
I'm so excited for that snobby era of you.
Thank you. It won't be posh.
Bring tea. And you're already drinking a lot of tea, and now she's like,
I could bring you really yummy tea.
yeah, I'm excited for that.
You know what I really want to do? This is bucket list item, but I've never done it in New York or London. Both are feasible. It's when you go to M&M World, you could take photos of your face and put it on the M&M. That's a thing you can do. So I think what I will do when I first move there in the first month, I'll just buy a bunch of M&Ms with my face on it and send it to my friends.
That's very narcissistic, but I love that.
But you would keep it, right?
I will. Vietnam.
I got you a little... Okay, ask me the question again.
Okay. What are you excited to discover about yourself?
Okay. I hate drum and bass. I hate drum and bass.
Drum and bass fans, do not reach out to her if you want to.
I could potentially get into DMB. I'm excited to discover about myself if I really like DMB. Because before I was like, oh, I don't even like trance. But sometimes I listen to trance, I'm like, oh, that's not bad. But DMB, I just like, how do you dance to DMB? I just don't get it. What I'm excited to discover about myself is if I would like DMB. And there's a lot of experimental music as well. I feel like I'm gonna have a really good time getting to learn more about different music.
Yeah.
Excited.
But stay tuned.
If I like DMB, no, I really can't.
We'll do a follow-up podcast in London. Last question, Betty.
Oh, you said there were two more.
Yeah, sorry, I miscounted. If you could give one advice to someone navigating multiple homes and version of themselves, what would it be?
I realized that as you grow older, there are certain comforts that make you feel very familiar. I think the reason I really like exercising or lifting weights is that anywhere I go, a gym looks similar and the movements are similar. If you're navigating different homes, different spaces, it could be really hard to feel grounded at times. But if you feel grounded in yourself and things that remind you of yourself in any context, that's really helpful. Activities for me would be my own brewed coffee. I know a specific type I like. I love to cook. I know there's 3 or 4 forms of comfort foods that I can whip up at any point. They're usually a classic playlist I have of music that I really enjoy. And then there's specific workouts or activities that I seek out no matter where I go. As you become older, you just know the things you gravitate towards. And that makes you feel really like yourself.
I always, now like recently I'm like incorporate like at least 45 minutes of reading in the morning. But I also wake up at like 6:30 kind of thing. So it's like, yeah, like I read, I journal, even just quick bullet points. Like I have to get that out of the system, and then I'll make sure I have breakfast and coffee, and then I go on with my day. I feel like those at least 3 to 4 activities, something that I maybe spend an hour and a half in the morning to get myself ready for the day. But regardless of how chaotic the day could go, I know I've done something for myself in the morning.
I like that. I need to do that more. Hopefully I can do that more now. The last thing I'll say, which
Yeah.
is I literally spin anywhere I go. I know this sounds ridiculous.
I've seen you doing that.
Like any city I go to. I remember I was in London for a work trip, 4 days. I went to Soul Cycle 4 days in a row.
Just
Like when I'm on a
stationary by with the music.
But when I'm like front row,
Like,
look
yeah,
at myself
I'm
in the
home.
mirror, I was like, yeah, this is where I'm meant to be. This is what, even when I was in Nairobi, I went to a spin class. It's crazy.
Wow.
Well, it wasn't the same. you
But
know,
it's
whatever.
home.
When I was in Hong Kong for like 3 days, I went to a spin class. I think when I go to Xiamen in July, I will go to spin. I will find a way. So I'm really excited.
Betty, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so glad that we get to do this in your beautiful home. So you have a little memory of what your apartment looks like when you're in Toronto. Everyone is excited for you in London.
Thank you so much for having me on. So much fun. This literally was my dream.
Dream come true.
Dreams do come true, clearly. If you beg your friends enough times.
Activism, you know? Okay. Thank
you.
you so much, everyone.
Bye.
It's so cute.
Yeah.
Look at this beautiful apartment.
Someone needs to rent this so I
Yeah.
can come back and rent it.
And that right there is Paris, Texas, everyone.